I'm tall. There we go. Hey, welcome to Tennessee State University. We're in the art department, art and design. My name's Courtney Adair Johnson, and I'm super excited to have everyone here. Welcome. And you know, share more about Native artists in Tennessee. So I'm, like I said, super excited to have everyone here. And yeah, I'm gonna hand it over to Shayna. I don't have any more to say. I'm running away.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you to everybody being here tonight. We're excited to have y'all join us for our second webinar. I wanted to share a land acknowledgement before we start. We acknowledge that Nashville, Tennessee occupies the traditional lands of the Yuchi and Muskogee peoples, the ancestral hunting lands of the Cherokee, the Shawnee, the Choctaw, and the Chickasaw peoples. Today, these people no longer have nation borders in the state of Tennessee after the Indian Removal Act of 1830 led to the forced removal of Southern tribes to the west of the Mississippi River. In particular, Nashville resides on land ceded in the Treaty of Opa. So we acknowledge the First Nations people and the specific tribes that were right here on this land here in Nashville. And if you're not familiar with NAI, some of you may be just joining in for the first time, but we are the Native American Indian Association of Tennessee. Been around for about 40 years. We're a nonprofit and we service natives in the state of Tennessee. So if someone was struggling to pay rent, they can come into our office and show their tribal ID and we can help them there. So we provide service for natives. We also host a powwow every October. So come out if you've never been. And we are hoping to build a cultural center, the first of its kind in Tennessee. And we'd love your help there as well. And you can visit our website, naiatn.org, to learn more about that. But tonight, I'm really excited to talk about our amazing Native artists. We have some in person here, and then we have some online joining us as well. And basically, the Native Artisan Cohort is sponsored by the Tennessee Arts Commission. So we're grateful to them for helping us create this program. And basically what it is, we have partnered with 10 Native artisans, all from various different tribes with different art forms. And we're meeting together, everybody's learning from each other, and we've been hosting workshops and webinars like this. So tonight, I'd like to start with the artists introducing themselves, giving a little bit of insight into who they are and more about their tribe and their artwork. So let's start with our in-person artist, Aliyah.
Yeah, I can go first. My name is Aaliyah Albert. I am with Kudare Ojibwe. I'm from Wisconsin, and I joined the artist cohort because I was just looking for community here in Nashville. I only moved here about a year ago, so I met Shayna at the powwow, and it's been really awesome. I do primarily beadwork. I also make dream catchers, but that's just. But yeah, so I'm here for my beadwork. I think that's it.
Yes. Can you tell us a little more about your tribe?
Yes. So Ojibwe, we're primarily up by the Great Lakes, so we're definitely woodland people. A lot of, I think we'll talk probably more about this later, but a lot of the like designs in traditional Ojibwe beadwork are those a lot of wildflowers and greenery and leaves and stuff. When I think about what is important to the Ojibwe, I always think of the Great Lakes and wild rice. It's why we are by the Great Lakes region, because a long time ago we were out a little more out east, and then we moved west to find where food grows on water. And that's kind of like, I think wild rice is a big part of just who we are and our connection to the earth as well.
Yes, definitely. I understand that. We're Stockbridge, Muncie, Mohican, from Wisconsin as well. So definitely love the wild rice. Can you tell us a little more about the art forms that you work with and some of your artistic journey?
Yeah, so I chose beadwork kind of because I just wanted earrings for myself. I heard a politician, I think from Minnesota, who's Native, talk about how she wears her bead beadwork like with pride into these situations where it's not usually seen or maybe seen as like unprofessional. And she was talking about kind of the power that it gives her to do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can do that. I'm gonna start doing that. But then as I start doing it and then kind of talking to my mom and realizing like, this is also something, like, I think that's what started my beadwork, but what sustains the kind of like joy and passion I have for it is knowing that my great-grandparents weren't able to do that up in Wisconsin, the Coudray. I mean, it's a story from most people is there's a lot of forced assimilation for her own safety. So getting to proudly be a Native artist and do beadwork is something that like, just knowing that like she didn't get to and now I get to for her and all of my other ancestors, like is what gives me a lot of like pride and sustained joy in doing it.
Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
Justin, tell us a little about you.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Justin Miller. I'm from the Stockbridge Muncie Band of Mohicans tribe up, our reservation is up in Wisconsin as well. But our original homelands are, kind of like what is now called the Hudson Valley, Hudson River Valley, New York State, all the way across to Vermont, connecting to really like where Manhattan is. And so, yeah, and the art form that I've been sharing and honing in this cohort is the native flute, woodland style flute. So it's a musical art form. It's not as much of like a physical art form, but I work with other media, I guess. And just honestly, yeah, make art with just about anything. I lead a art club at a high school that I used to teach at, and recently we made some prints, and so I love the idea of like, yeah, I don't know, you can use again and again, and or how like the interplay of tradition with like a dynamic futurism, I guess, is kind of like what I see the flute as. But any sort of art I engage with, I think that's where I tend to like, or like that's what I like to channel, is like sort of that yeah, that interplay of how we make meaning from the past, but also like make new meaning and dream new things. So yeah, if it's all right, I'll play a little bit of the flute, just to demonstrate. The one thing, and I guess we'll get more into this, but like, as with a lot of native art forms, but definitely the flute, it's like heavily informed by the natural world and how we relate to it. And so the flute, yeah, when we play, it's in such a way that's sort of improvisational, I guess would be a term, but also like unique each time. There's not like, there's little flourishes and tunes that we'll play, but it's not really like replicable, or at least like there's this understanding that it's each time we play it's its own song. So anyways, I'll just play a little something, and yeah, sometimes it takes me a minute to kind of like fiddle around, but yeah.
Love hearing the flute. So these are in-person artists, but we have some amazing artists online too. Let's see who we've got next. Aaliyah Myers, can you share about yourself?
Hello, my name is Aaliyah Myers. I'm getting over a cold a little bit, so you'll have to excuse me, but I am from the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, but I'm also Cherokee and Muskogee Creek, so the three C's, Choctaw, Cherokee, and Creek. My art form is Choctaw basket weaving. I make different styles, various styles of Choctaw baskets, as well as other Southeastern tribal designs. I am currently the reigning Miss Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma for 2023 to 2024, and I'm happy to be here.
So can you share with us a little bit about your tribe and what makes it unique?
So something unique about my tribe is that we see the beauty in everything, every creature. For instance, lots of people don't like snakes and they think they're very scary and just they reject them a lot, but we really value the eastern diamondback rattlesnake, a venomous snake at that, because we saw how valuable they were in our gardens with helping with pests, because we didn't have pesticide back in the days. And they also made sure that they would warn us instead of automatically attacking us like other dangerous animals. So they were very thoughtful in that way, and we really respected them because of that. I know lots of other tribes don't like snakes for other reasons, but I like that Choctaws could see both the beauty and the strength and the self-control that these creatures had to like warn us instead of automatically just attacking us. And that really resonated with our Choctaw people. And so we came up with other ways to settle disputes instead of just warfare, because we too wanted to preserve life and saw it as something very sacred and important. So that's something unique about Choctaws.
Yes, I love that. And I know, I mean, being Miss Choctaw, I know you're very connected to your tribe, but can you share some other ways that you connect with your tribe?
Some ways I connect with my tribe is I help teach classes, and it's really nice to see the youth come out and learn how to make baskets or do beadwork or clay making, pottery, whatever it is. It's really nice to have them come out because we know that it won't be lost. These arts will continue on. And even though through assimilation, there were efforts to eradicate the knowledge of these arts, but today it's like a lot better. And just having the opportunity to pass that down as it was passed down to me is really a good gift. And that's how we would have remembered as much as we do now about the Choctaw culture.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm so grateful for that. Just kind of the revival that seems to be happening with a lot of tribes, a lot of Native people reclaiming, language and art forms. It's very healing and powerful for us at this time, I feel like. One more question for you, Aliyah. So can you share a little bit, I know you've shared with the cohort, but share a little bit about your artistic journey and how you kind of got on that path?
Yes. So originally, even though I'm over here on the Choctaw Reservation right now, I was living in the city in Virginia, and I didn't really know anything about my Choctaw culture. And then my Choctaw grandmother, she passed away here in Oklahoma, and we moved back home when I was about 12. And it was just this hole that I kind of felt in myself, not knowing like really who I am or where I come from. And going back home, I got to learn a lot from the elders and the community members of my area, like what it means to be Choctaw and what we did and who we were. And that really fulfilled a gap inside of myself. And one of the ways that I healed through this journey was being introduced to different art forms like basketry, beading, weaving lots of different things, not just baskets, but it's just been very helpful to me, not only in a way that like I can share my art with others, but for me to heal on my healing journey. It's really important and imperative that we know who we are and where we come from. So that's helped me on many different levels.
That's so true. And I love that. I love your story. And I appreciate you sharing that with everybody tonight. So we have our next online artist joining us. Alicia, would you like to share about yourself and your tribal affiliation, a little more about your tribe and your artistic journey? Oh, we can't hear you. Can you turn your?
Sorry,
Okay.
I got it.
No worries.
Sorry about that. My name's Alicia Wildcatt. I am a citizen of the Eastern Band of Cherokee. A little bit about the Eastern Band of Cherokee. In the late 1830s, the Cherokees were removed to Oklahoma. My ancestors refused to be removed and hid out in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And those folks make up the Eastern Band today. We reside on about 56,000 acres, and there are about 16,000 of us. The folks who removed are now known as the Cherokee Nation and the United Gadua Band, and they're both in Oklahoma. My art form is metalsmithing. I work with copper, brass, bronze, but primarily with silver. And I got into this probably about 5 years ago, just trying to find something to heal me a little bit. I work in a job that can be very heavy at times. So I was looking for something to give me some peace when I was not at work and to get that off of my mind. And it happened about the same time that folks in my tribe were really trying to reconnect with this lost art form of metalsmithing. It was a prominent traditional Cherokee form that I'm aware of going back to the Mississippian period. And we've found traces of that. It's been a very healing journey for me. I've learned a lot about my language, my culture, and other traditional art forms just by participating in metalsmithing. So it's been a whole lot more than I bargained for when I decided to start the process of learning.
Your work is so beautiful and how you create these pieces. Can you share a little bit more about that and some of the symbols that you use in your art?
Sure. So I love to read. I love to read our stories. One of the pieces that Shana may be talking about is I use the water spider a lot in jewelry, in my earrings and statement necklaces. And going back to what Aliyah was saying about rattlesnakes and how people reject them, spiders are the same way. And kind of like the rattlesnake for the Choctaw, the water spider is for us. She is part of our creation story and how we got the first fire. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to read the stories and pull the elements and symbols from those stories to kind of tell a story in a piece of art that I do. So I've used several mythical creatures, the water spider being one, and an uktana is another, which is a horned winged serpent with a jewel in its forehead. And the uktana was a protector, but also a serpent. So some people feared it, but those are a couple of the symbols that I use in my artwork.
Yes, those are so cool. I love hearing about all of that. Thank you for sharing. I think we had Kirsten, but she may have gone offline. She's on there. I'm looking at Chelsea. You said she's on there. She's in. Thank you guys.
There we go. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes. Hey, Kirsten.
I was muted, that's why. Hey.
Hey, Kirsten.
Excuse my hair. I just got off work. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. We're glad you're here, girl. Can you share with us a little about you, your tribal affiliation, some ways you connect with your tribe, and then share with us about your artistic journey?
Sure. So my name is Kirsten Solomon. I'm 25 years old. I reside in Jackson, Tennessee, but I'm part of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. Um, my mind just went blank. I'm currently the Miss NAIA Powwow Princess. So that's been a lot of fun this year, especially doing this. But I did this cohort mainly for ribbon skirts. I wanted a way to, well, it all started because I was graduating college and I wanted to wear a ribbon skirt to my graduation, but like I kept asking people to make me one. My mom kept asking, and like no one, they would always be like, yeah, we'll make you one. And then they never did. So what me and my mom did is we learned how to make our own ribbon skirts. So now she has a few, I have a few. I've made some for cousins, and my best friend just made her one. I've made some for someone on a powwow committee. So I've made plenty of ribbon skirts at this point. And I've just really enjoyed making ribbon skirts. It just brings me a lot of joy. They're not traditional to my tribe, but it's something that's being adopted by a lot of Native artists and a lot of Native women. Usually for the men, you'll see them wear ribbon shirts. So it's something that's been adopted, kind of, I guess, maybe internationally. I've seen so many beautiful ribbon skirts, but all of my artistic journey originally started with my mom. She is the one that started beading in 2021, and she was just wanting to teach me some of the things that she was learning. And that was a lot of fun, just having her teach me. We're both self-taught. She taught herself using YouTube and TikTok and Facebook, because it's really hard to learn from anyone down there in Mississippi just because we're so far. So she's been an inspiration to me, like just teaching herself how to do it. I do have something that I made because I'm so proud of it because it's my own. This is like a traditional Choctaw collar that I had made. Um, so this is something that I'm like extremely proud of because I made it all myself and it's my very first one. So this is my baby. And like I think it was Aaliyah was talking about the, because since I'm also Choctaw, you can tell we use diamonds in everything. So this is another thing that we use diamonds in, because of the diamondback rattlesnake and the representation that it had for our tribe. But besides beadwork, I have recently learned how to make Choctaw shirts, and I have like two. So this one was the one that I learned at a workshop. It's not that pretty, I'm sorry, but it was the very first one. So this was the very first one I made. It was inside out because I'm currently making another one and I couldn't remember what to do. But it's so tiny. Like it's so little. But this one was made with rickrack, so it doesn't have the diamonds on it yet because I haven't learned how to do that. So this is one that I have. And then I also have one that I'm making for my baby cousin. It's all not together. But this one has like the bias tape. Where this rickrack is where we would put diamonds on like the shirts and the dresses. So like you would usually see two things of bias tape and then the diamonds would go in it. And then on the sleeves, usually you would have the same thing. You would have two things of bias tape and then diamonds right here. So diamonds are very prominent in our tribe. With the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, they're in the name. Most are found in Mississippi, so I have a lot of family in Mississippi. But there is a very small, like, I don't want to say reservation, but a very small community that's in Henning, Tennessee. That's where most of my family resides. And then there's a few more Choctaw just kind of spread out in Tennessee. But Henning, Tennessee is probably the most prominent where everyone knows that there's a community. It's very small. Got started with one family. As jobs were needed, they left. like families would leave Mississippi, come to Memphis, and then they created Henning. And so a lot of people ended up in Henning, and that's how Henning came to be. Um, but I think that's it. Was there another question? I kind of started rambling and then I got off track.
No, you're good. That's, yeah, I just wanted to know more about your art form, your artistic journey, how you got there. And I feel like you covered it, but yeah, you're welcome to share more.
Okay, I think that was it. Oh, I'm trying to learn how to make a choctaw dress. Because part of my journey has been, so being in Tennessee, I grew up in Tennessee, so I was raised knowing I was Native, but and like knowing some of our traditions, but not knowing a lot of them, not knowing like how to do the beadwork, the significance of the dresses. I actually just got my Choctaw dress in, so I'm really excited to wear it for the first time. Um, but my mom is currently working on my beadwork, and it's been hard, like not knowing how to do that. And I'm very thankful for the tribe sending up people from the work, from the cultural legacy staff down there to come up here and teach us these things, because there for a while the Choctaw, like the language, beadwork, basketry, all that was dying out because no one knew, like none of the younger generations knew how to do it. And so the tribe worked really hard, worked with a lot of people, got grants and all this other stuff to start helping teach like the younger people, and the people that didn't know how to do like all these art forms, they worked really hard to teach us again. So it's been great like having those and being able to learn how to make a Choctaw shirt or learn how to make the collar. Um, they've done round combs, stickball aprons. So they do a lot for us, and I'm so thankful for them. And that's been a huge part of my journey, like just plugging in and learning these things about my tribe and like learning how to do these things. So it's been really fun, and I hope I continue to learn how to do a lot of our art forms. So
Thank you, Kirsten. Yeah, we're so grateful to have you as our NAI princess and as part of the cohort. So we are going to move on to some questions now, kind of like a roundtable discussion for all artists in person and online. And y'all, you know how this is when we have our group meetings online, just kind of whoever wants to speak, sort of popcorn style. So I'll start it with like a series of questions and then you guys can start discussing. Here are the first few questions. So what pillars ground the culture of your tribe? Describe the tribal norms, traditions, and understandings that carved the path of your people. And what makes your tribe who they are, and what connects you to your tribe?
I can go first. I see the question, sorry. I kind of talked about this in my like intro, but I think at least for Ojibwe. See, I had an answer. Okay, nothing left. No, so I think the connection to the earth, is really important, especially when it comes to like the Great Lakes and the wildflower patterns and all those things that you see. Like that is like when I think about what makes my tribe who they are is very much our geographical location and connection to these huge bodies of fresh water and wildflowers in the woods and the snow and the harsh winters, and like how wild rice sustains us through that, and also like reciprocity that we have for the, so she'll take care of us so we can survive through these winters. And that is kind of what I think of. So
Yeah, I'll go next. Oh, you wanna go, Lynn?
No, you can go.
I guess, so in our tribe, there's a symbol, that we have, that's kind of like our main, tribal symbol called the many trails symbol. And even the name, Mohican, or Mohicana is, means people of the waters that are never still. So that's like you were saying, like, it's like a geographic, it's about the land or like the water that sustains us, but it's also like a symbolism, I guess, or a symbol of this, yeah, just like a way of being, right? Like, so that name, people of the waters that are never still, and then almost like, again, like this interplay of like what transpired with our tribe post-colonial era, or like during the colonial era into the present, was, forced removals, and relocations, sometimes not forced, but this constant motion and movement, and I think, like, thinking of like what pillars ground the culture of the tribe, it's almost this like paradox of like we're grounded in this idea that we are people with many trails, and we've traveled many trails, and we continue to travel those many trails. And so yeah, I guess I would say yeah, for Stockbridge Mohican people, it's like this almost embracing that, like that could be something that might be like oh man, like that that we could let define us in a restrictive way. But I think kind of turning that on its head and letting that empower us as people who have traveled, yeah, many trails. And so yeah, and how that's reflected in the artwork, I would say that similar idea of a willingness or almost a necessity to be dynamic and willing to make meaning where it might be difficult to, and pass knowledge intergenerationally, and yeah, learn and grow, and in such a way that's in relationship across time and space and generations. So yeah, that creative process is definitely informed by the history of our tribe, but also like the ways of being of our tribe. So
Hello. So when I think of the pillars of our tribe and community as the Choctaws, I think of the matriarchy, the mounds, the connection with the land, and then the oral storytelling traditions. So with the matriarchy, I know this is similar to lots of other indigenous tribes to North America, but we were matrilineal, which is pretty cool. When the Europeans came and they wrote down in their journals, they wrote down different things about the Choctaw people because they thought it was very strange, taboo, and out of the ordinary for them. Like, for instance, we followed our lineage through the mother's side. So it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, whatever clan your mother was, you were a part of that clan, and you would be called as that clan, and you would have to learn the ways of your mother's people. And it was very important to us that the women were very well respected, and they weren't over the men, but it was very equal. the men weren't over the women either. We were the owners of the land. We controlled everything inside of our community, and the men were more over hunting and outreach. So they would do the connections with other tribes. That's what they were in charge of. So we were in charge of making sure everything was run clearly and precisely as it should be. And so, of course, when the Europeans came, they were like, it's very weird around here. Like, these women are like calling shots. I don't know what's up with that. But I think it's really cool that they thought it was like something important enough to write that down. So women are very important and highly esteemed in our community. It feels really good because that's not, that hasn't always been the norm in the world, but it's cool that that's where we come from. And then something else with the oral traditions and storytelling, that's how we know so much about the culture that we know today, is because it was passed down generations through generations. And because of that, some of the stories have different details in them depending on the family that you ask to tell the story. For instance, the creation story, some of the details are different depending on who you ask. But they all have the same point, and it's really cool to be able to hear like the different ways that people tell it, but it all kind of meshes together. And I'm really glad that that's something that they did, because if they didn't, we wouldn't know so much about our culture that we do today. So I'm really appreciative of the ones who came before us because of that. And then our connection with the land, we were mound builders, much like the other Muskogean era tribes from Moundville. So these mounds, there were like many different reasons why they were built, but some of the main ones was because we believe our Jehovah, or God in the Choctaw language, he created this mound and formed a cave out of it, and then formed the first 4 humans and set them on top of that mound to dry. So that mound is over in Winston County, Mississippi, Naniwaya, our sacred mound. And every time, much like Alicia was saying, during the Trail of Tears, some of our Choctaw relatives, they hid, and some of us were moved. So the ones that stayed are the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, and the ones that left were the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And so every year we have the stickball tournament, and our Choctaw people from Oklahoma, we get to go back home. And I always feel like a really deep emotional connection to the land. Like, and it's really nice because a lot of the Choctaws will say, "Welcome home" from Mississippi. And it just feels really good because it's like, yeah, this is where we're from, and we're like bridging that gap. Like, even though they're over there and we're over here in Oklahoma, like every year we get to go back together, and it's really nice. So I'd say those are the pillars of the Choctaw community: the matriarchy, the connection with the land, and the oral storytelling.
I guess it's my turn now. So for me, those pillars are the things that make Cherokee uniquely Cherokee. And again, I'm repeating some of the things that have already been said, but language, song, dance, baskets, pottery, wood carving, all of those things make us uniquely Cherokee. There are some things that are similar to Choctaw. There are some things similar to Creek that I think there's commonalities in all of the Southeastern tribes that we see. And, but there are those things that make us uniquely Cherokee also. I know that it's been said before, but my tribe, as many other tribes across this country, are in that Renaissance period to try to reclaim some of those things and stand in those spaces and recognize that we are a matriarchal society and that some of those things should go back to the traditional ways. And we're seeing a lot of that here on our boundary. And let me tell you why I say boundary, because the land that I live on is not a true reservation. A true reservation, the government owns. So for the Eastern Cherokee, we reside on the Qualla boundary, which we own the land and the government holds the deeds in trust for us. So when I say on our boundary, that's what I'm referring to. Sorry, I wanted to address that before I went any further. To the Renaissance, things that people were beaten or even killed for doing back in the day. We're trying to reclaim those things and continue to pass our pillars on to the next 7 generations. And I think that's another thing that makes us uniquely Indigenous, right? And why we still have all of these pillars and why we can say that we are Indigenous to this land is because all of these things have been passed down and passed down for hundreds of thousands of years. So to me, one of those pillars is passing along my knowledge to someone in hopes that it is passed on to the next 7 generations.
Hey, I just want to piggyback off that because I've noticed something that like a lot of us have kind of um shared is something, well, among all of our tribes. And I mean, it's not really an art form or anything that you can see or touch, but I think something that almost every tribe like that is built on, or that each tribe is built on, and I think it's a pillar without many of us even realizing it, is sorry, is resilience. Because if you stop and think about it, every tribe has gone through something. And I mean, just being Choctaw, and Aaliyah can, kind of back me up on this. The ones that were forced into hiding when they stayed, I imagine that they were scared. I mean, that you don't know what's going to happen. And then the ones that left and were forced on the Trail of Tears, obviously, like there was sickness, like, they froze, like there was so much just hurt. And like the Choctaw were so close to dying out, and yet we're going as strong as ever today. And like the fact that not even, it was probably like 15 years after the Trail of Tears, the Choctaw came together, the very small band that we had at the time, and like brought in $170, which doesn't sound like a lot today, but it's the equivalent of thousands today, and gave it to the Irish when they were going through a potato famine. And like our language has almost died, our art forms have almost died, and each time we have come back stronger, and we are still here, and we are still going strong today, and our culture is just as beautiful today as it was back then. And I think that's something that almost all of us that are Native can relate to, is just that resilience that we all have, that I don't know if it's just passed down generationally, like just from us being Native. Um, but to me, almost everyone that I've met that's Native is such a strong person, and they have all been through so much for the most part, and they just continue to be strong and just like come through whatever they're going through. And I just think it's so beautiful that that's something that's shared among all of us.
Kirsten, that's so powerful and so beautiful, and it's very true. I think that's the thing that actually brought me to NAI over a year ago, was searching for community. And I think that we seek that as Native people because only a Native can really like connect and get that. Like there is a depth that we experience when we meet another Native, because we're like, you see me because you've walked through pain too, and like you said, it can be in our lifetime, but it can also be what we're carrying behind from generational trauma, but it's invisible. People can't see it or touch it, but we all feel it. And I think that's the beautiful thing about being a Native artisan is that we can transform that pain. Like you said, that's what our people have done for years. We, instead of becoming bitter and angry, we create something beautiful from it. And it is a testament of our resilience, for sure. Oh, love that. We're gonna move on to our next set of questions, and then I'll let y'all popcorn again and keep talking about this section here. So how does art preserve Native cultures and experiences? What connects you to other traditional Native artists and creatives? And what inspires your traditional art practice?
I can go first again. I think we were kind of just talking about like what connects you to other Native traditional artists and creatives. I think it is that kind of sense of community, like what Shana was just saying. So there's that. And I spoke a little bit earlier about what inspires my traditional art practice, and that's like my great grandma and that sort of stuff. But I think also, as we're talking about like these things that these art forms that at some point or another, even now, are like threatened. And I think it is really fulfilling and means a lot, and it's also a responsibility that like we get to do for like, I don't know if that's making sense, like part of the inspiration for the traditional art practice is the carrying of this knowledge and this like craft.
Yeah, so I think this question is just fascinating to think about, like preserving culture, experiences, knowledge, and like how humans do that in general, right? Because it's like, in many ways, that's what makes us human and separates us from maybe the rest of the animal kingdom, is this ability to like pass knowledge intergenerationally, with storytelling and art, and so I love to think about the utility of art, and yeah, I would argue that in some ways, like our art forms and art in general can be a almost a more effective, not just like more beautiful, but more effective way to transfer knowledge and experiences and communicate, I guess would be the most broad way to say it. And I think in the modern world especially, but in the Western tradition, there's sort of this idea of like, to know something is to name it, or to write it down, or to distill it until to all its parts to fully know something. But I think art is more, well, obviously it's more like ethereal and abstract, maybe would be another word, or conceptual. And so like, again, the interplay of like, and think about, yeah, like the effectiveness of the ways of communication. So it's not to disparage books or more academic forms of knowledge sharing. It's more to sort of like, yeah, like think about the utility and like the importance of art in that, in just like the human condition of like how we, yeah, not just as something that's like beautiful and fun, which it is, but it's like blending that with like, it's, yeah, and because of that, it's really an effective way to communicate some of these things that can't be named, maybe, right? Like experiences, like how do you name, how how could you write a, you know, bullet pointed list of the human experience? And like, would that be more accurate than witnessing beautiful artwork? I don't know. I would argue that that art is more effective at transferring or embodying experience. So yeah, and then so I think that's what it inspires my art practice and channeling the experiences of my ancestors and my immediate family, and then beyond that, like it's a way to yeah, not just preserve, but like yeah, I guess preserve is the right word, but I like this idea of like bring it into the present or be present with it, you know, myself, be present when I'm playing the flute or creating art, and be present with those that came before me in this sort of like collaboration. So yeah, it's like connecting, and that's the other question is like what connects me to other Native artists is like it's cool to be connected to past artists like our dad or the people that came before him. So like I connect to them as well as other artisans, and it's so cool to just like hear other people talk and just like be inspired by it. It's like life-giving to hear y'all share these things. So it's like yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
Before somebody else goes, that reminds me of something that somebody told me a long time ago, that art is really effective at communicating like feelings, because like when you watch a movie or see a painting or hear a song, you can feel the feelings that it's trying to convey without having to actually experience whatever that hardship is yourself. And I think it's a really good way for us to like understand each other as well. And I think that this whole Native artist renaissance that's like really coming about, I don't know, it just gives me a lot of like hope and joy, because non-natives are getting to see like experience those, or at least see those feelings through art, and then like preserving these things that are going extinct is important, but also the word preserve can sometimes be like, oh, it's in the past, but it's not. Like we are human beings today and we live today. I was going to connect that to what I just said and now I forgot, but I think that is kind of my point, and I can hit it back.
I want to just add one quick thing to that, like what you were saying, like yeah, you put it better than I did. It's like art engages with your senses, like you feel it. And so it's like reading a book, again, not to disparage those ways of passing knowledge. I love reading and you know, worked as a history teacher. I love all of those things, and I love blending art into that as well. And so like when you but like reading might just only engage just like this part of your brain, and I guess you have imagination when you're reading, but like art is like you're witnessing something, you know,
It
and like
evokes something inside of you instead
Yeah.
of just like reading it off a page.
yeah, or sometimes maybe you can touch it or you can hear it or smell it, or you know, like it's like the sensory experience of knowledge and culture is yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good thoughts.
I can go next. It's like we're going in order again. But so for me, I believe something that really ties the community together are these cultural arts. And the reason why we have our community is because of these arts, because we all need each other in some way. We need those elders to teach us the new ways, and the younger generation needs us to teach them. So it's all like intertwining us together. And because of that, like we have our community. And it's like, it helps to build that relationship and necessity. It's like, otherwise, like, maybe what would we be connecting over if not culture? Like, what are we going to talk about? So I think because we have it, it's like we also have this community. And it's not about me, it's not about it's about all of us, we. And that's like such a beautiful thing because in Western community and culture, it's very like, how do I get ahead? And what can I do to stand out of the crowd? Etc. But with Choctaw people, it's like not just me, because we depend on this for our cultural information to be passed down, that breaks that bond of just I and me. It's like we, because we need this. I want my future generations to know like what their Choctaw ancestors did and how to pass it on. I want them to be able to have the knowledge to make baskets, beadwork, feeding, whatever it is. And so that eradicates that selfishness that you get from the Western culture. And it's like, how do we succeed? How do we move forward from here? Because we can't do it alone. It has to be all of us. And so I think it's beautiful on many aspects, but that really branches and just connects all these people because of the sense of community and survival of these tribes. And lots of tribes' sovereignty depends on if they have enough first language speakers or if they have these cultural arts. Like, what makes you a tribe? What makes you a tribal government? Otherwise, maybe the US government says, actually, you can't have your sovereignty. So it's very much like a necessity to have that community, to like keep the sovereignty of many of our tribes and to just keep so that we can take care of each other. So I really like that. And that's also what inspires me as an artist, is to just protect ourselves as best we can in this Western world. And it's really nice to see the resurgence of all these cultures. And as you guys were saying, to educate the Western people as well, and maybe to help them break free and say, hey, it's not like there isn't an I, there's like a we. And maybe they can learn from us as well to like treat each other better and everyone else. Maybe in the future it can be like a better, safer place, not just for us, but for them as well.
I just want to go off what Aaliyah was talking about, just because what you said about like the community and like how we need those things. So like speaking on community and like, we're all, so many of us are from different tribes. Um, and yet like most tribes all do some type of beadwork, and like the amount of people that either I have reached out to or my mom has reached out to and just like asked, like, we do it this way. Is there a better way to do it? And I mean, even within our own tribes, like people do these things differently. I mean, you can learn how to do a Choctaw shirt probably 500 different ways. It all depends on who you ask. Um, but like that sense of community, just knowing that this is a safe space amongst us, like anyone who's native, to ask and be able to receive that knowledge, I just think is awesome. And I mean, even Aaliyah Alberts reached, whenever we were at the workshop, you were like, hey, if you don't have like a beading circle, like we could do one and we could just hop on Zoom and do it. So I think that's just really fun, to be able to do that. And I really love that just sense of community that this has brought me. So just as my growth as an artist, just doing this has been awesome. And then I think I've talked about it earlier, like my mom has been my inspiration because she was willing to really put her head or her focus towards learning how to do beadwork and to watch her learn how to do it herself. And then, y'all, I am not the best learner. I have zero patience. And the fact that she taught me how to do a lot of this stuff is amazing. And just being able to spend that time with my mom, I'll always be able to cherish that, and like doing the powwows and things like that with her. And so like I'm always thankful that I've had that extra time to just spend with her And even like my cousins and things like that, other people that do beadwork, we'll just get together, just kind of bead and then go our separate ways. So it's just been a lot of fun doing this and being able to know that I have a safe space to go to. And I've met so many different people that I know if I have any questions, I can ask.
So I'm going to piggyback on a lot of what everybody has said so far. For me, connecting with other creative natives, it is that like-minded community for me, that comfort, that safe space. Even if it's different art forms, I think we feed off of each other. We get ideas from each other. We lift each other up. Um, and we know that it's important to pass what we've learned on and to share that knowledge. Um, a side note, when I first started doing this, one of the things I made a comment to somebody who doesn't create, I said, I really would like to get to a point where I can teach a class in my community so that others can learn what I've learned and learn from me. And they were like, why would you do that? They're going to do what you do and take away. And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not about gatekeeping. I want to share my knowledge. Even if there are 100 people out there doing what I'm doing, my art is still my art. They're not going to duplicate what I'm doing. They're going to have their own style, their own aesthetic. Even if it is very similar to mine, it's going to be different. So for me in the beginning, that was one of the things that I really wanted to carry on, that I'm not going to be that type of person. This is something I want to learn so that I can pass it on, so that we can hopefully have, hundreds of metalsmiths in my community, which there's not even half a dozen of us right now. And most of them work with copper. So that's my plan. Is my next step is to start teaching, to share this, to create more creative people in the community. And to answer another one of the things that inspires me, I talked a little bit about in my introduction, is our oral history, and our stories are one of the things that I'm majorly inspired by and like to showcase in my art. But our language is another thing that I use a lot. And also, and the panel may agree or may not agree with me, I think that natives have a different sense of humor than most. That we can take something negative or bad that people laugh. One of my big pieces that I created a few years ago was turning something that a major news network said about us during an election, and translated that into our language and made a statement necklace piece and a bracelet. And I'm not sure, some of you may be too young for this, but they referred to the Native American population as something else. So taking things like that and making art out of them. I'm also not just our traditional stories, but things that are said and things that happened in current day. I like to turn those things into art as well.
I bought a pair of beaded earrings recently, and it was just like a can of Spam. Did you see those ones? And I was like, I love this so much.
Just wanted to say, like, I've also seen earrings that have spelled out something else, like they're hoop earrings, and I have made some that said bougie native. So like I understand. Like I got you.
Okay. We'll move on to the next section of questions. I'm enjoying this. I don't feel we're having fun. I think this is going well. So what does security feel like for you? And as a Native artist, what does safety and security look like for you in your practice? And then how does your creative practice hold space for you?
Somebody else want to go first this time?
I can if you want me to. So, safety and security for me means that, like, my community has my back, but also just a mutual respect that's kind of unspoken between Indigenous artists that I don't know, that we just have for each other. There was this one time, I will share this story, of where I didn't feel safe and secure when it comes to my own traditional art. So there was an exhibit at the Choctaw Cultural Center that I had created. It was 8 different baskets, different styles. And there was someone outside of the community. They had found out they were Choctaw, so they were kind of like making that reconnection, of course. And they were like at first very respectful, but then this individual was claiming my art as theirs, and it was very alarming for me and not secure and safe. But the reason why I bring it up is because when this individual was publicly stating like, oh yeah, I made these baskets, and they clearly hadn't, I didn't even have to say anything because the people of my community and the other artists were like, actually, like it says right here on the panel who made these. Like, you can't just lie about that. And it was just like, I felt safe in knowing that even if, like, I don't gatekeep either. My job as a cultural educator is literally to teach these cultural arts. But even if someone does come in and they threaten that, I know that I'm safe because my fellow artists and community members of the Indigenous community, they have my back. And I also feel safe, like, knowing that it's a safe place to wear my cultural arts at work. We get to wear, I said this before, but moccasins and other things, and it's safe to like be indigenously who you are, where I am. And that's not the same for everybody else. So I'm very fortunate and grateful that that's the experience for me. But just to know that like other Indigenous artists and community members have my back is really, it makes me feel really safe.
Okay, I'll go. Native safety and security, right? I think, I mentioned this in our, like, discussion that we had about this, is that, and it kind of ties in with, like, Native art, is when I am out in public and I see other people, wearing beaded jewelry, like, very obviously Native jewelry, it's like, oh, like, I see you, like, you see me, we got each other, and it's, like, that fun, and, like, also relaxing, like, there's another Native person here, things might be okay, like, so there's that, but I also, have a hard time thinking about Native safety and security, like, as its own thing, because how do I know this? I think for Natives to have like true safety and security, we also have to be fighting for everybody else's safety and security. Like, I have a hard time, like, we can't be safe if are Black or anybody else, and also globally, people who are Indigenous to where they live, like, I have a hard time feeling safe as a Native American, like when you see all of these other things going on, and how can we truly be safe if X, Y, and Z are actively, like, bad things are happening. So that is just something that I think about, and I can't separate it from Native American safety and security, because we live in this world, like imperialism and colonialism is run rampant. So yeah, I just think that we should be fighting for Indigenous people across the world, regardless of where they're Indigenous to, for Native safety and security.
Yeah, that's powerful to think about. And I think a lot of times this comes up when talking about ideas of environmentalism or indigenous rights, how they're tied to environmentalism. And there's almost this like distillation or siloing that can go on sometimes when people think about these things, but it's almost kind of funny in a way, because it's like, well, no, like if the indigenous people of a given place are being, you know, valued as human, then it's like, that's good for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's good for the environment, it's good for, it's not this sort of like, but I think that's a very indigenous way to think about it, right? It's like, no, like, I'm not saying that I want to take rights and then do the same to like the same sort of colonial thing to everyone else. It's like, no, actually, it's just like, how do we reorient ourselves in such a way that includes the indigenous ways of being and knowing, and you know, contrary to what people might assume, it's like that's good for everybody. There's like a heard this on NPR. There's a, I forget the author's name, but there's a book that's about the civil rights movement in the United States, and she sort of like identified this one factor of like community pools, like public pools. And when you know, a lot of states and cities were as desegregation was happening, a lot of communities that had, you know, racism within the leadership of communities, they pulled back these things like public pools and public libraries. These places of community were shut down due to racism, but it hurt everybody, because the Black community was being gatekept from public services. It hurt other communities too, you know, on the basis of income level. And so she's a, wish I can remember her name. She's a Black author, but the thesis of her argument is essentially like, you know, when certain communities are oppressed, it's not just those communities who are experiencing that. Maybe directly they are, but indirectly it hurts many people. So yeah, that's a fascinating idea to think about. And in the, I guess in the context of like creativity and artwork and safety, I don't know, it's kind of overwhelming to think about, honestly. Yeah, I've struggled with feeling like, yeah, I don't know. I guess my response would be like, this community makes me feel safe. And like Aaliyah was saying, like thinking about things in a we sense intergenerationally as well is when I can sort of generate that sense of safety and security to do what I need to do, because it's difficult. And it's like a lot of the overarching culture in general tells you like, just, you gotta, you know, feel safe as if you are just like putting up, you know, and building yourself up as an individual. And so yeah, it just feels incompatible with like, it's like, I don't know how to do that, and it's hard to do that, you know? And so it's like, like, how do I, almost like, just forget that, and then kind of like come back to our ways of knowing and community and generating safety. Like Leah was talking about matrilineal and matriarchal societies. So anyways, that's a lot there, that's a complex subject. And yeah. For this community, and it's affirming to think about not trying to contort yourself into generating safety the way that it has been created or other communities created safety, right? So like maybe like how can I not contort myself to that and create safety in the ways that our communities have been generating it, you know, since time immemorial or forever, you know. So
I think it puts natives in it can feel like a more vulnerable situation if it's like the dominant culture is like you have to protect yourself and your family and that's it. And then to come at it with a indigenous perspective can feel like I just keep thinking of the word vulnerable, because instead of just like I'm not trying to just protect myself and my family, like I want to protect and care for everybody, but then it's so overwhelming. But I don't know, that's the word that keeps coming to mind when you're trying to like be a native and live, not trying to be a native, but when you're native and trying to live in both worlds, like yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around too, being like what I feel like I know to be right or what I know to be maybe a better way of living, and then having to exist also fully in this world. It's, yeah, I don't know. That wasn't a really finished thought, but that's what
I have a brief story, if that's okay. I know like we're two of us are talking a lot, but like the safety with like our culture and art, like in at a place of work, I would wear beadwork a lot and like bring my stuff into the space, and it, you know, higher ups were kind of like, hey, you can't do that, or don't wear that, or don't do that. And it was sort of this, yeah, like a really difficult experience of feeling unsafe to be just who I am, right? Like it's kind of like, oh, like I'm not trying to impose anything on anyone. I'm just being myself and representing my culture, right? And so it ended up being sort of a positive outcome. And there was a lot of dialogue that happened, and it made the space for that. And that organization sort of like reevaluated why even in the first place they were saying that I couldn't do X, Y, or Z, you know, whether related to dress code or what have you. And so it was a relatively positive outcome, but an example of that same idea of like my safety being preserved, or like my native identity being affirmed and allowed in the space was beneficial to everyone else, because it's like people spoke out like, oh yeah, well, now that you mention it, yeah, I don't feel safe to, you know, represent my culture or wear my religious apparel. And so it was a good outcome, but it's, yeah, it can feel, it's sensitive, I guess, but yeah.
So like the only time, so I didn't really feel unsafe. That's not really a word I want to use for this example, but kind of going off of what you said. Um, when I was graduating high school with my associates and with my bachelor's. All three times I asked for permission if I could wear an eagle feather because it was something that my mom had passed down to me. High school, I never got an answer back, so I ended up not wearing it. With my associates, we were not allowed to have anything except for a tassel hanging from our mortar board. Um, but the lady that I had talked to, she was so sweet and she wanted to make this happen for me, that she was like, if it is not attached to your hat, so she was like, if you can put it in your hair, she was like, we cannot say anything to you if it is in your hair. So she was finding any type of way that I could wear my feather. But I guess it was more of an annoyance, not really feeling unsafe, just like that annoyance that we are still having to fight this battle because there are still so many high school seniors, college graduates, and things that are fighting that. And it's like, how much more effort do we have to put in for you to understand that this is our culture? It's a high honor, and it's not going against anything. It's just a way for our parents or grandparents or just our tribe, our family members to honor us for doing something that honestly not a lot of natives had the opportunity to do 20 years ago. Um, but I just wanted to bring that up because I like what you were talking about, the feeling of, you know, wanting to share our culture, and that's a good way to share our culture. Um, But on top of that, like I have been very lucky that no one has ever made me feel unsafe. Um, like even at work, I've worn beaded jewelry. I've worn it to church, and like no matter where I go, I've always gotten compliments because usually I'm not gonna lie, my mom makes like all my beadwork, but everybody's always like, "Oh, your earrings are so pretty," and I'm like, "Thanks, my mom made them." Or she's made me a beaded like a pen wrap that I take to work with me all the time. And everyone's like, your mom is just so talented. I'm like, I know. They always ask me, they're like, do you know how to do this? I'm like, yeah, I know how to do it. I just don't do it that often. Um, but she's like, just the fact that like I've been so lucky to feel so safe, like no matter if it's at work, at church, out at the store, like I've always just felt so safe that I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones that hasn't really had to feel unsafe, and I'm so thankful for that. Um but if any of you guys ever feel unsafe, let me know, because I will always, be there for you, and I will stand up for you, and we will fight for you, I promise.
So I don't want to restate or reiterate anything that anybody's already said. I'd rather take this time to share a little story about work last week. I was in San Francisco for a work conference, and it was Native American and Alaskan Native based. There were probably about 400 participants. And day one, I was working a booth. I set up the booth, so I went in comfortable slacks and a top and a jacket. And let me tell you, I felt so out of place. Everybody there was decked out to the nines in their beadwork, in their jewelry, their ribbon skirts. It was like a native fashion show. And everybody wanted to know about who you were wearing. Oh, she's got on bee yellowtail. Oh, that's sky eagle. And it went on and on. And I'm talking about hundreds of people in this space. And it was an incredible feeling of community, um, sovereignty. Um, and I haven't ever felt that way um, in any space as a Native American wearing what we wear, whether I had it on or not. Um, so I think that it can only get better from where we are because we are standing in our space and we're saying, this is who we are. We're proud of it. We're still here. We're not going anywhere. This is us. Deal with it, basically. So last week was a reaffirming and great feeling for me about the safety and security as a Native and a Native artisan, that people are proud to say who they're wearing and what they're wearing, to add that as a side note. But I think the more that we take up that space, the better it's going to get.
So true, Alicia, and I think it's very exciting. I don't even know if I thought in my lifetime things would start shifting like this for Native people. It is powerful, and again, only if you're a Native, you know what that feels like. And I've felt the energy with what you shared, and it's powerful. It's powerful when our people are gathering together and being acknowledged and being able to be proud of who they are. So our last set of questions here, how does your practice provide healing yourself? What do you do with your creative practice? How do you feel your practice heals you, and how do you feel your expressions can heal the world?
I can go first this time. So when I first started this journey, I made a necklace that was in syllabary in our language. It's not something that I can do an introduction. I can tell you my name and those kind of things, but to be able to read the syllabary and to know words when I see them on a sign in town, that wasn't something that I could do. So through this process of creating jewelry with our syllabary, I've learned our language. I'm not a fluent speaker by any stretch of the imagination, but for me, learning the language and being able to look at a sign and sound out what that word is and go, hey, I know what that is. That's healing for me. And I have learned, or I've started taking some language classes throughout this 5 years and learning bits and pieces to do that. And that's cathartic to me. To be able to learn something that was stripped from my ancestors, that was taken away. And one of my favorite things to do with my creative practice is teaching people, teaching them how to say their name in Cherokee, or telling them a story through a piece that I've created that they've never heard before, educating someone who's not Native why I'm wearing a water spider earrings and why that water spider is important to me, or why I'm wearing a snake with horns around my neck and why that's important to me. So learning for me has been healing. And my favorite part about this creative journey is being able to educate others, Native or non-Native.
Gonna kind of piggyback off you. So like this was the first time that I've ever looked at my artistry in a way as educating people, if that makes sense. Because before it was just, I'm going to create for myself or my mom or my cousins, my best friend. Like it was always just like, I just want to create things. And I never really thought of using it as a way to educate others. So this was like the first time that I've actually like looked through like an educator's lens for this and like how to share my culture. And so like, for instance, at the workshop we did medallions that are very important to, you know, the beadwork for the Choctaw people, because, you know, you have a medallion with your bead set. And it was a way to show like, you know, maybe what clan you were from, or not clan, what family you were from, if you had money, things like that. So I mean, medallions played like a huge part in the Choctaw people. And so like we had made little tiny medallions out of perler beads. as a way to like just educate people, and like that way they could have that with them and take it home with them. And so like this cohort in general has been very eye-opening for me. I mean, I've even learned a lot from you guys and about my own culture, in all honesty. Just, kind of having to sit back and actually really, really pay attention. Because like I could tell you about the Choctaw people in general, but like being able to like really listen and read and, ask people about things and like really just take that in. This has been a lot of fun for me. It's just been a really big learning experience, and I've had a lot of fun with it. And I hope that I have taught you guys some things. That's a little questionable, but I hope you guys have at least learned something about maybe the Choctaw people or just from me in general. And so, yeah, that's probably what I'll end on, unless somebody else makes a good comment, and then I might piggyback off that. Who knows?
I can go next. Um, something that heals me and holds space for me about my art is that, like Alicia was saying earlier, it opened like a doorway not just to cultural arts, but language, other traditions, and for me personally, stickball. So when I did move when I was 12 to the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma reservation area, um, my mom put me in the youth league for stickball, and at first I was very shy, and so I wasn't really into it. And then I started playing like with adults when I was 16, and it's like full football style tackle without any padding or helmet. So I was like, oh, okay. And what else was also cool is that with the women and men, when they played co-ed, the women could tackle the men, but the men can't tackle the women. So I was like, that's really empowering. Cool. And so then I really fell in love with it. And our women's team, they got so the Oklahoma Choctaw, when we go to Mississippi and play stickball, we've never beat them in the tournament itself. But our women, when we first started playing, we lost like 0-8. Our very first game is really bad. And it's a single elimination tournament. So imagine driving from Oklahoma all the way to Mississippi just to lose your first game out of like a 2-week tournament. So we went back home. But this past year we made it number 2 out of 13 teams. So we made it to the championship game, and they picked all stars from every team, about 8 players. And I made it on the all-star team this last year. And so the reason why I'm saying that is because when I won Miss Choctaw Nation, the next night there was a tournament. So I was in the process that night of changing out of my regalia and my crown and sash and changing into my gaming gear. And I had like my jersey on, but I still had my crown and sash on. And I was holding my stickball sticks. And this little girl came up to me and she was like, whoa, you can do both? Like you're a princess and a stickball player? And I was like, honey, you can do whatever you want to do. Like whatever you set your mind to. I was like, I also, I make baskets, I do a little bit of everything. There's no limits for you. And she was just like really excited. And she's like, I'm gonna do that when I get old enough. I'm gonna be a princess and I'm gonna be tough and play stickball. And I was like, you can do whatever you want. And that was just really healing, not only to like her, I assume because like she realized like the limits are endless, but also to me, because I know I'm making a difference and people are watching. People are always watching in the community, especially if you're like princess. So just like having that responsibility to be a good role model, and make sure I am involved in the community, it helps to heal me a lot. And what helped open the door to all of that was my art, learning to basket weave. I learned all these other people and I got involved in all these other aspects. So it's been a really nice healing journey for me on a personal level.
So kind of piggyback off of what you said, the like that your art opened up the opportunities for community. I feel that so much, and yeah, I think like that has been really healing, but also for me, getting to proudly wear my beaded earrings like everywhere, like that, I feel like is just heals so much of me from like, I don't know, my great grandma couldn't, and now I get to, and I don't like, it just feels really healing in that way. And also beadwork as like a craft and a kind of mindful activity is really healing for me when like there are all of these crazy things happening all of the time, and then to be able to just like sit in my practice and get to be like fully just like truly myself and just sit with my beads, and like I think the act of beading itself is just so healing for me.
Just want to add one quick thing, just because we have a lot of women on here, and like kind of going off what Aaliyah said. Well, both of you are Aaliyah, but kind of what both of you were talking about. So like my cousin, for instance, Aaliyah Myers, you'll know this. A lot of back in the day, women weren't allowed to be drummers. Like they couldn't drum. And my cousin Jana Ben, I'm gonna shout her out because she was one of the first female drummers that they actually let on the stickball field to drum with. And I am just so immensely proud of her. And just to know that, you know, 10 years ago, I mean, that wasn't even heard of, wasn't even thought of. And now looking back at some of the pictures, you see all these little girls with their own little drum out on the stickball field, you know, looking up to the older ones that are either playing stickball or drumming, or, you know, the ones that are doing the princess pageant. So it's just so inspiring, even though like we're sticking to our traditions, just seeing how much we have come, or see how far we've come, and just to see that the changes we have made that are for the better, because there are some amazing women that can drum and sing out there. And just knowing, you know, we've gone from no women at all out on the stickball field drumming to having so many little girls out there. And I think that's just so inspiring. And I think that kind of goes with what Aaliyah Myers was talking about. And just to see that and be the inspiration for the younger generation coming up. So I think that's really important for all of us to remember that we are, you know, we're inspiring the younger kids, and we got to remember to keep those traditions alive and just to like keep going. So
I don't really have much to add. I think you guys put it beautifully. And healing is, yeah, it's not an individual process, or I mean, I guess part of it is, but it's a communal, and yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
So cohorts, we have a little bit of time left. Is there anything else that you wanted to discuss, or anything just on your heart or your spirit that you want to share with our audience tonight?
I'm just really grateful for all you guys. That's it.
Yeah, me too. I think this is like the most I felt like heard and like seen. Not even just as an artist, but as an individual, you know, growing up as a middle child. No, I'm just kidding. But um yeah, and I have learned a lot from each and every single one of you, and the ones who aren't like here right now as well in the cohort, and just lots of things that I'll take with me and like cherish information for like a long time. So you guys are very like wise beyond your years too. So yeah, I'm really happy to be a part of this.
grateful for all of you artists, opening up with us. If we have any questions, we could also see if anyone on our Zoom has any questions for Artisans. Do any of you all in the online crew out there, do you guys have any questions? Feel free to type it in the chat. And we can chat. I can find a question.
Eleanor asks, I would appreciate a perspective on respectful ways for non-native people to interact with traditional art. I'll also ask, like, what are things maybe would be appropriate or not appropriate for a non-native person to wear, or
So I'll jump on this because I do see a lot of people ask this. You can wear, so like doing ribbon skirts, you are more than welcome to wear a ribbon skirt as long as it is bought from or made by someone who is native. Same thing with beadwork. Because like Temu has a bad habit of, or like AliExpress, those types of, and I think Amazon does it too. They have a bad habit of like taking artist art. So like take fringe beaded earrings, for instance, and taking it, making it, produced, what am I trying to say? Mass production, and like selling it for cheap. And like, yeah, it might last you a little bit, but would I always ask people, would you rather have something that was produced in a factory, or do you want something that is, handmade, made with love, made with thought? Thoughts and prayers go into a lot of our beadwork or any of our other art, um, and that's going to last you a lot longer because it's made with so much in mind. And so like really you're more than welcome to wear anything as long as it's native, it's native made. So, or indigenous made. But that's my stance on it. Some other people might have different opinions, but to me, you're always more than welcome to wear like ribbon skirts, ribbon shirts, or like beadwork as long as it's indigenous made.
I feel like that's a really hard subject and very controversial. Um, I agree that if it's more like Pan American, Native American, that it is probably okay. But some people will be like, hey, you shouldn't be wearing that because you're not native. And I think it just depends. Like, if it's Pan, I think it's fine. But if it's like specific to that tribe, I think you need to get permission in the right way. Like, if it's specific to the tribe, because for some cultures and tribes, you have to earn the right to wear certain things. I know for Choctaws, a lot of times, a long time ago, we wore like shell beads. And usually that was a way to show like status. Not everybody had shell beads. Like if you saw a woman wearing like lots of shell beads, that tells you she's a very highly esteemed, highly accomplished woman in that Choctaw community. Or like even tattoos. You couldn't just get tattoos like you can today. You had to earn your stripes, so to speak. So that came with wisdom and age and accomplishing great feats. So I think just being very mindful and making sure that we try not to wear things that are like tribally specific, because different rules change for different tribes. But I think for the most part, like what Kirsten was saying, if you're trying to wear something that looks indigenously inspired, it's best to go to the source of an indigenous person, because these other companies try to take away from us. So I think with the beaded earrings and like ribbon skirts, like lots of different tribes wear that, I think that's okay. But also, I'm not the master, so that's just my opinion.
I also think it's good, like, even if they're not things that, like you have to earn, like you're saying, even just like regular beaded stuff, like knowing the significance or just like knowing more about what it is, even if there are things that you like can wear, just like, yeah, that's it.
I would say, I would add to that, like, viewing things from a perspective of like relationship and like intent is like a good place to start with any sort of like apparel or clothes or like ways you represent yourself. It's like, I'm not um, a motorcycle guy, so I wouldn't necessarily wear like, motorcycle boots and a motorcycle jacket. So and I think kind of reframing it and through that lens can be helpful. I mean, it doesn't solve all the questions, but I think thinking about it in that way can be helpful. But if my best friend, or if I knew, my uncle was a biker or something and he gave me a jacket, it'd be like, oh yeah, it has a story attached to it. So I think story and relationship play into these things when there's like cultural exchange, and how if it's and just like, yeah, if it's with a good heart, as opposed to like sort of like self-evaluating and being like, okay, am I trying to extract something from this for maybe personal gain or for some other reason, and if that's not the case, then yeah, I would also like encourage to like not over stress about it either. That's its own form of pedantic or patronizing treatment of culture in some ways, or it can be. So like, yeah, rooting things in story, like people have said, and relationship. Because like, yeah, why else would you want to wear something? Like I wouldn't want to wear golf shoes if it wasn't, so I don't know. For what it's worth. But good question.
Can I follow up with that
Sure, yeah.
question? I know some of our artists, they sell their work. Does anyone want to like, I don't know, this is a good opportunity. Maybe you could shout out that y'all also are vendors. These are good artists to support. These are direct natives that you could buy from.
Yeah. No. Buy my earrings. No. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm
Alicia?
I'm on Instagram as well, and there's a link to my online store. It's Graybeard Metalsmithing, and it's gray with an E.
Anybody else want to pump their work out there? Do either of you girls, Aaliyah and Kirsten, do y'all have?
That well.
It's right there. You can look us up on Facebook. It's got our picture on it. It's Chutta Creations. But also like not just to shout out myself, you can also like Facebook is a good place to go because even I've gotten beadwork and stuff from there. Just I will say be careful a little bit on who you buy from if you want to, but there are like beading groups specific to buy. Like I've bought from like California, I've bought from New York, just different places too. And like I've even sold things to all these different states. So like those like you can just look up beading groups, like indigenous beading groups. And sometimes people will be selling their work, like if you're looking for something specific to a tribe, or if like anything that any of us makes just isn't really your forte, there might be something out there for you. So you can all, but I would always warn you, just do your due diligence on who you're buying from also. But yeah.
Okay, I tried to write it down, but my marker's too thick. And then I tried to like show it on my phone, but that didn't work. But It's Crafty Chula Creations, and Chula means fox, in the Choctaw language, and I'm Fox Clan from the Creek side, so that's why I chose that name. I was like, that'd be cool. And I like alliteration, so CCC, Crafty Chula Creations. I do basket weaving, flat mat weaving. I make Choctaw diamonds, and my sister makes aprons, stickball aprons, so she sews the diamonds on the aprons. I bead, but I don't sell my beadwork. I don't know if it's at that level yet, so I just wear it. But yeah, mostly known for baskets when it comes to like what's for sale. I never make anything that's like culturally sensitive. Like I make stuff that anybody can buy. There are specific, very sacred designs with like Choctaw burial sites that most Choctaw artists know, like, do not recreate that design. So know if you're buying from me, like it's safe and it doesn't matter who you are, you can wear it. Yep.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, artists, for sharing. And yes, please support our Native artists and follow them online and purchase from them. Thank you to CSU for hosting us. We're really grateful for this. And thank you to the Tennessee Arts Commission for sponsoring this and giving us the grants so that we can create this program. Thank you to everybody who helped. Chelsea, thank you. Thank you to our staff and our board and everyone who contributed to tonight. We're really grateful. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you, audience, for being here. We send you all love and blessings tonight. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you at our next event.